All right, we are now on day 10, and it is Tuesday, April 8th, and I have given you two quadratic equations to solve using the quadratic formula. I also laid out a handout that looks like this, and I made this for you guys yesterday to hopefully help keep track of all the different steps that are involved when using the quadratic formula. Okay, now we are going to look through this little sheet as we solve these, just so I can kind of demonstrate how we would use this paper, and we're just going to go from there. So we'll start with number 1. What is step 1? Yes, we want to identify all the values for A, B, and C in our problem. So I'm going to get out some different colors, and I'll probably match it to this paper here. So what is the value of A? 4. So A is 4. What's the value of B? 3. And C? -11. Good. So we really want to pay attention to the signs. If it's subtracting a number, we say it's negative. If we're adding, we say it's positive. So we have our A, B, and C. Now we'll look at step 2. Just like here, we identified A, B, and C. Now we want to use that quadratic formula, and we're going to replace A, B, and C with the values that we just identified. So I'm going to start by writing out the formula, but giving myself some blank spaces to fill in. So let's see. X equals, what comes next? -4. Oh, is it 4? What letter do we put first? Negative B. B. And our B is 3. There we go. It's okay. So we have negative B. What comes next? Plus or minus. Then what? Square root. What letter next? B squared. So we're going to write 3 squared for B. Next in the formula we have -4 times 2 values. What are the 2 values?
4.
4 times A, which is also 4, times what? -11, our C. Okay. And the very last thing is that whole problem is being divided by, bless you, 2 times what? 4. 2 times A. And our A is 4. Okay. So we just did step 2. We filled in all of our values. Okay, and we're just looking at this. Anytime we saw a B, we put a 3. Anytime we saw A, we put a 4. Anytime we saw C, we put -11. So, according to our handout, step 3 says we're going to replace each of the values that we plugged in step 1, and we are going to simplify each of the operations. So, for example, if you have a B that is negative, like in this problem we have a -10, when you plug it into the formula, B is still -10, but now you have a negative minus outside of it. Negative and a negative make it positive, just like that. Now, over here, I had a positive B. 3. But in the formula, we have negative b. So first, what does that positive 3 become in the formula right here? Negative 3. So whenever we rewrite the next step, now we have a negative 3. And I'm actually going to start this on a different page because I'm going to run out of room, I think. So let me just rewrite this real quick. We have x equals, and we just found out that we have negative 3. Next, we have the plus or minus, the square root. Now, what can we simplify underneath the square root? We could do the multiplication. So we have negative 4 times negative 11. What is that going to give us? 176. Is that positive or negative? Positive. So I just simplified this part. 176. Now I need to simplify one more thing under the square root. 3 squared, which is 9. What does squared mean again?
Times itself.
Anything times itself. So this isn't 3 times 2, it's 3 times 3. Common mistake. So we'll just make sure to keep track of that. Okay, so we've simplified that. We did that. What is there left to simplify? 2 times 4, which is 8. Perfect. Okay, now we are here. We still have more that we can simplify in this problem. What do I need to do next?
Add 9 to 176.
Yeah, let's add 9 plus 176. What does that give me? 185. Okay, now something that I see people make a mistake on quite often is once they add the numbers together under the square root, we forget that there's a square root there and just say, oh, so it's negative 3 plus or minus 185. Why is that not correct?
Still need to find the square root.
We still need to use the square root. This is a whole operation. Whenever we are finding the square root of something, we are finding what number, when I multiply it by itself, will give me 185. That is not something I can do in my head, so we'll use our calculator. Let's see where my calculator is. I can never keep track of it. All right, let me pause this and find my calculator. So I've got my calculator, and we're going to hit the second button and the x squared button. Now I have a square root. And what number will I be typing in? 185. Perfect. And notice we get a not so pretty number. That is okay. Sometimes we're not going to get a perfect number when we find that square root. So I'm going to say we're going to just copy down 2 decimal places. So 13.60. So instead of the square root of 185, now I'm going to rewrite everything, but with the new number, which is 13.60. So I have x equals negative 3 plus or minus 13.60 divided by 8. And now you'll notice that we are to this point in our little cheat sheet. We've gotten to where we have simplified everything on our problem other than actually splitting the equation up. So now we separate the plus and the minus. Okay, so when I separate my plus and minus, we have two equations. We have -3 plus 13.60 over 8. And what would the other one be?
-3
Mhm.
minus 13.60.
Perfect. -3 minus 13.60 over 8. Okay, so we have our two problems. Now, I have two different things to solve. Let's start with the plus. I need to do whatever is on top of my fraction first. So, we are just going to type that in, -3 plus 13.60, and that will give us 10.6. Now, what am I missing? The 8. We still need to divide by 8. Okay, so now I have my 10.6, divide by 8. And we get 1.3. We'll round up to 3, 1.33. And that is our first value of x. Okay.
Quick question.
Yes.
So if we don't round up, or if we miss that last digit, would that be like marked off?
No, no, very good question. Whenever it comes to getting answers that are decimals, there is going to be some variation. You might end up getting 1.29 even. You might get 1.31. I'm not grading you on rounding. I'm just grading on, are you in the proximity of the correct answer? So I won't be real specific on that. You won't lose points. Good question, though. Okay, so now I need to do the next one. What's -3 minus 13.6?
-16.6.
Good, -16.6. Still divided by 8. And let's see what that gives us. -2.0, round up to 8, 2.08. And again, it's okay if your answer's not exactly the same number as mine, but it should be very close. And there is our first solved problem. Our values of x, we would write them together now as x equals 1 point, oh, I forgot to write my negative. Okay, x equals 1.33, comma, -2.08. And that would be our answer. Now, the vibe that I got yesterday, I'll repeat this again, was that many of us were a little confused and were scared to ask questions. So, to remedy that, after each problem we do, I don't want to know who's confused, who has questions. I would like for anybody to give me a question. Come up with a question, even if you understand it completely. Try to think what might be confusing for your classmates. Ask me those things. So at this time, I'm going to give you a moment to think. Somebody ask me a question. Cody.
Okay, so the negatives underneath the square root, though, could you mind, so what if there were 3 on there? Would that,
What if there were a negative under the square root?
so, okay, so the original equation was 3 squared minus 4 times 4 times 11 times -11, I apologize. So what if there was a -4 times -4 times -11?
Okay, so right here we have, like you said, -4,
Yeah.
4, and negative 11? What if the 4 was negative and we ended up getting a negative number under the square root as a total? That's a good question. So this will actually move us into a lesson we will get into very soon, but maybe we could do a little sneak peek of it. So let me ask you guys this.
More simplified, like just with the negatives, is there a way to determine like if it's like negative 4 times negative 11 or the 2 cancel out, right? Make the positive.
Yes.
But the third is introduced in it. Is that still cancel out because it's a negative times a negative times a negative?
So there is kind of a trick to that. If you have an even number of negatives when you multiply, you will get a positive answer. So watch this. If I do negative 3 times 2 times negative 2, here I'll put the negatives in parentheses. How many negative numbers am I multiplying here? There's just 2. Now because there's 2, it's an even number, these 2 will end up canceling each other out and we'll get a positive answer. So negative 3 times 2 is negative 6, and now I have a negative times a negative, which gives me a positive. Negative 6 times negative 2 is positive 12. But if I don't have an even number of negatives, watch what happens now. Negative 3 times negative 2 times negative 2. Negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. Now I have a positive times a negative. 6 times negative 2 gives us negative 12. So if we have an even number of negatives being multiplied, we will get a positive answer. They will cancel each other out. Each negative has a pair that gets canceled. We have a pair of negatives here, but now we have a negative out by itself. We would end up with a negative answer here. So,
That makes sense.
yeah, that's a good way to kind of help yourself remember. What if, for example, we had a negative and 2 positives? Without me working this out, do you think the answer would be positive or negative? Negative. We don't have another negative to cancel this negative out. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8 times positive 2, negative 16. 1 is an even number, 1 is an odd number, 2 is an even number, 3 is an odd number, 4 is an even number. They go back and forth. If you have an even number of negatives, you will get a positive answer. So that's a good question to ask. Just a little trick to help you remember. Now, were you just asking about the number of negatives being multiplied, or were you asking also about the scenario where there's a negative answer overall under the square root?
Curious about that, but that's where I was getting confused, is just this kind of setup.
Okay.
Getting the right sign underneath all that.
I gotcha. Yeah, so if we have in our quadratic formula, we always have a negative 4 being multiplied. And then you have A, and then you have C. We're always doing negative 4 times A times C. If both A and C are negative, so if we have a negative times a negative A and a negative C, I have 3 negatives being multiplied. Is this an even number of negatives or an odd number? This is an odd number of negatives. So will we end up with a positive or a negative answer? Negative. They're odd, so we'll end up with a negative answer. Now, for example, if we had our negative 4 times, let's say A is negative, and let's say C is positive. Will I have an even number of negatives here or an odd? Even. I have 2 negatives. So if we have an even number of negatives, they cancel out, right? Will I have a negative answer or a positive answer? Positive. Nice. So So it's something to think about. Our negatives can cancel if they have partners. This one, I could cancel these two negatives, but I still have one left over with no partner. So we will end up with a negative answer. We would end up with a positive here. Good little side little thing there. That's good to think about. Okay, I want another question about the quadratic formula. Whether you understand it completely or not, come up with a question that you think may benefit someone in this room. About any part of the process from here till the end.
So is the B always negative?
Good question. Is the B always negative? Are you referring to when it's outside here at the beginning where it says x equals negative b?
Yes.
Yes. So in the formula, that negative sign always comes at the beginning before b. Always. That will never change. But if we start with a positive b, like we did here, yes, it will always become negative. Now, what if we started with a negative b, like in number 2? Number 2, our b is negative 10. If I start with a negative sign right here, and then I plug negative 10 in for b, it becomes positive. So if you start with a positive b, your outer number will be negative. If you start with a negative b, that outer number becomes positive. That's a good question. That's a very good question. Okay, how about we start working through this second one and we can kind of see how that negative b affects things. And as we go along, try and come up with more questions at each step. Okay. So, let's look at number 2. We already know b is negative 10. What is our value for a? 3. What is the value of c?
Negative.
Good, negative 5. It's all right. You're okay. You're okay. B is negative 10, C negative 5. So we've got that all straightened out. And I am going to start another new page to work this out. Okay. So we have in the formula x equals, what comes next? Negative
10.
Now what's b?
I mean positive 10.
Ah, so we're going to start by plugging it in without simplifying it yet. Yes, it will become positive 10, but I want to show everybody how we get there. So our formula starts with negative, and then I wrote a space for b. b is negative 10. You see what I put there? Now I have negative 10. This becomes positive because those negatives cancel each other out. So I have x equals negative, there's my b, negative 10. I'm going to rewrite a, b, and c up here. My a was 3. My b was negative 10. And my c was negative 5. Okay. So it starts with x equals negative b. Then what? Plus or minus the square root okay, and then something's getting squared. What do I put in there? Negative 10. Good. So negative 10 squared minus, we have 4 AC. What do I plug in next to 4? 3 for A, good. Good, -5 for C. And all of that is divided by 2 times A. And our A is 3. Okay, we've got it all plugged in. So, whenever our B is negative, there's a few things that we need to be careful about. First of all, starting with a B that is negative from the get-go, the number on the outside will become positive because the negatives cancel. The next thing to be careful of is your squared number under the square root. You have -10 squared, okay? Which means -10 times -10. I'm going to show this again today because I showed it yesterday, but some of us still made this mistake on our exit ticket. If you type -10 squared, your calculator is going to give you the wrong answer. This is the one time I'll tell you your calculator is wrong because it's going to tell me -100. You will never square a number and get a negative answer. Does anybody know why? That's right. Squared means that you are taking this number times itself. -10 times -10 will give us +100. Those negatives cancel. On your calculator, the reason it gives you the wrong answer is because it is following the order of operations. And in the order of operations, you would do 10 squared first, and then it's reading the negative sign as times -1. So really, if you're going to find squared on your calculator, just don't type in the negative. Just type 10 squared. Save yourself some pain. That's the answer, okay? Do we have any questions about that, or do we understand that pretty okay? Somebody ask me a question. Or is that actually like everybody got it? I think we got that one. Okay. Okay. So I have my numbers plugged in. Let's start simplifying. So I'm going to rewrite x equals. Now, as we copy things down, let's see. What can I simplify? Let's start right here this time. Yep. Let's copy. -10 becomes +10. Plus or minus. Good. Square root. Now let's see. -10 squared. 100. So I'm going to cross that off and I'm going to write 100. Now, -4 times 3 times -5. Am I going to get a positive or a negative answer here? Positive. Why? So exact opposite, but it's because we have an even number of negatives. Because the -4 and the -5 are pairs. They'll cancel each other out and we'll get a positive answer. Now let's just double check it. So I'll type -4 times 3 times -5. 60. Yes. So am I writing +60 or -60? +60 because it's positive. Okay. And yes, what's 2 times 3? 6. Awesome. Okay. Now before we go rewriting this all over again, yeah, we can simplify 100 plus 60 to 160 fairly easily. Now, where do we go from here?
Square root of 160.
Yeah, let's find the square root of 160 and then rewrite the problems without any weird symbols. Now we're going to have just numbers. So, second x squared button, there's my square root, 160. and we get another decimal. So 12.6, we'll round that up to 5. 12.65. And that gets rid of my square root. So that's 12.65. So when I rewrite my problem, how can I rewrite it? X equals, what comes next? 10 plus or minus.
10 plus or minus.
12.65. Good, 12.65 divided by 6. Okay. Okay.
Then you do 10 plus 12.65.
Good. Now we're going to separate it. Now we have 10 plus 12.65. Over 6. And the minus 10 minus 12.65 divided by 6. Okay. Now, what'd you get for the first one?
12.10.
12.10? Let's see, I'm going to solve it too. 10 plus 12.65. 22.65 divided by 6. Oh, I got a different number. What did you do?
I think I just plugged it all in one time.
Oh, okay, so this is another thing that I'm actually so glad that you said that, because this is something we need to talk about. Why can you not type in your calculator 10 plus 12.65 divided by 6 all at once? Does anybody know why that won't work?
Order operation.
Order of operations. Calculators will not just do things the way you type them in. They're going to do it using the order of operations, which is kind of annoying sometimes. 10 plus 12.65 divided by 6. Your calculator is going to do 12.65 divided by 6 first. And then it's going to add the 10 at the end, giving you an incorrect answer. So, really, if you want to type it in all at once, you can only do that if you put parentheses around it. Or the safest bet would be solve the top, then divide. So we would do 10 plus 12.65 equals, then we have, and I know it takes a little longer, but it's worth it to get the right answer, 22.65. Now we divide by 6. And we get 3.775. Good. And we can round that to 3.78. Okay. So now let's do the bottom one. Remember to do the top part first. 10 minus 12.65. Negative 2.65. And now we divide that by 6. And I got negative 0.44. Negative 0.44. Okay. Was everybody able to get to that answer? That's good. That's good. Okay. Now, after going through this a second time, I would love if anyone else could come up with another question at any point in time that you think, I bet you somebody in this class is struggling with this part. What can you ask me about this problem?
Why did you get 3.78?
Why did I get 3.78?
That's not what I got.
What did you get?
3.73.
Okay, so it was because I rounded up. If you wrote 775 instead of 78, I won't count you wrong.
How did you do that?
I'll show ya. Okay, so let's have a quick mini lesson in rounding decimals. Again, I'm not grading you on this, but it is nice to know. It's nice to know. So I'm gonna do it on here. 3.775. Okay, so if I wanted to round, basically what I'm saying is that I only want 2 decimal spaces. I'm saying I want these 2. The way to decide how to change the numbers is, first of all, my first number is going to stay the same always. My second number, I decide if the number next to it is 5 or more, I decide to move this up 1 and change it to 3.78. If this number was 4 or less, we keep the number the same and it would stay 3.77. So here's an example. Let's see, 5.323. If I want you to round this to 2 decimal spaces, we're looking at the number next to it. Do I round up to 3.3 or do I keep it 3.2?
Keep it 3.2,
Keep it 3.2. Why?
because it's less than 5.
This 3 tells me to round down. It means to keep the number the same. If it was 5 or more, we would go up. So another one, let's see, 6.267. If I want to round to 2 decimal places, what would my 2 decimals be here?
6.27.
Ah, 6.27. Why did you round up?
Because it's greater than 5.
Yes, because the number next to 6 is greater than 5. We have a 7 here, so we round up. Does that help, Lisa? Girl.
Just write it as whatever the calculator.
Right, it's okay. You actually don't have to round on your answers if you're worried about it. I won't ever take points off for it, but you're welcome to come in on Friday and we can workshop this together. All right. All right. Any other burning questions? Yes.
What's the reason for the plus and the minus? Is there like
For the plus and the minus?
yeah? Like why-
Good question. So the reason for that is because we're dealing with squared numbers, like we have an x squared as our leading term. And when you find the square root of something, let's see, like the square root of 36, what number can I multiply by itself to get 36? 6. But couldn't you also do negative 6? Yes. So the reason we do plus or minus is to show that since we're doing a square root here, we need to show the positive answer of the square root, which is 12.65, and the negative answer, negative 12.65. Kind of sneaky. I guess I don't teach that directly. I know, I wish we had time to like get into all of those details and specifics. I see some of y'all shaking your heads. Maybe you don't want to get into that. But yes, that is the reason why though, because with a square root, you have a positive answer and a negative answer. So, kind of cool. Or maybe not, but I think it's cool. Ah, okay. Did going through those 2 problems help a little bit?
No.
Lisa. Does this help a little, having the steps written out?
No.
Girl, I'm going to kick you out.
Okay.
Just kidding. Okay, so what are you confused about? Okay, so how about this? Let's go through another problem, and the moment you're unsure, tell me to stop, and we're gonna do it. So let's see. Let's start with another problem. I feel you, girl. How about, let me find one that works. I had a whole list of them somewhere. Okay. Let's start with, and I'll label my page. I didn't really label the last 2 pages because we were just doing the do now problems. So I'm going to call this page 1, I guess. So really it's not continued, but whatever. Okay. So let's do 2x squared minus 11x minus 3 equals 0. Okay. And this goes for anyone. If we are moving on too quickly, slow me down. We can go through it more slowly. Absolutely. I won't ever hurt my feelings. Promise. You got it, girl. Let's slow down a little. Yes.
We have not used the 0, like the equal 0. What's that for?
Ooh, okay. So the equals 0, when we use the quadratic formula, we can kind of just pretend it doesn't exist. I don't want to explain it incorrectly because, to be honest, when we are factoring to solve, the equals 0 is, what we're setting our factors equal to solve. With the quadratic formula, the equals 0, I guess, is just to tell us that all of our numbers are on the right side of the equation. If it wasn't equal to 0, we would need to do some subtracting and move it all to the same side first. Kind of like we did a problem like that yesterday. Hang on, let me pull out that paper we used. We did... Like sometimes it wouldn't be equal to 0. For example, like here on number 12. All right. Yeah, so this one says equals negative 56. We couldn't use the quadratic formula until we add 56 to both sides to get it equal to 0. So I guess if anything, the best answer I can give for why is it equal to 0, it's just to give us the reassurance that our equation is ready to use the formula. We don't need to rearrange it any. Good question, though. Very good question. Okay. So, we are starting this new problem. We're going to work through it slowly. Now, Lisa, you tell me, what do we do first?
A, B, and C.
A, B, and C. What are my A, B, and C? My A is 2. Okay, then what?
Negative 11 is B.
Perfect. Negative 11 is B. And finally,
C is negative 3.
perfect. C is negative 3. Okay. Now, before we go through this, I'm going to rewrite the quadratic formula at the top of my page, just so that I have it. And you might hate me for it, but I'm going to make you sing again today. Listen, I know this works. It helps. You can tell me. It will get stuck in your head and it'll be annoying, but whenever you're taking a quiz later on, having this formula memorized is so helpful, because then you're not going back and double checking every 2 seconds that I put the right letter in the right spot. It really helps. So I have it written up here, and I'm going to have you sing it with me. Hi, Jesse. You came just in time for the singing. All right, y'all ready? We're going to sing it all together. 1, 2, here we go. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. One more time, and here we go. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Yes! You guys rock. Okay, I appreciate y'all entertaining that. I know it's embarrassing for some, or it feels embarrassing, but you shouldn't be embarrassed, guys. Come on, we're in this together. It's only going to help you. I know, I see some of us like slowly covering our faces. It's like, it's fine. Okay. All right, so we got that out of the way. We have our formula. Now let's continue at this slow pace and really stop to think at every step. I want this problem here and a few more today to be everybody's opportunity. Please, I want you guys to feel comfortable asking me questions. I want you guys to feel confident in what we are doing. And if you don't feel confident in it yet, if you are feeling like, I am so lost that I don't know what to ask, you can tell me that too, okay? I won't be upset with you. I won't be frustrated with you. The only thing that's frustrating to me is if you come in here after not being here for like 3 weeks and, you know, you haven't watched any of the videos and you're not putting effort in. But if you're here and you're showing up and you're doing your best and you're struggling, that's okay. I am here to help, okay? So we have our letters labeled, our values. What do I do next?
Set up the equation.
Let's set up the equation. So slowly, step by step, I have x equals what? Negative. Now negative 11 is b. If it just said b plus or minus the square root, then we would write negative 11. We're going to start with negative, and now what's b? Negative 11. So we have negative, and then b is negative 11. Do we see what just happened there? This is b, negative 11, but there's a negative outside of that negative 11, okay? So yes, we can see here this is going to become positive 11. That's important. When your b starts as a negative, it will become positive outside the problem. Okay, so we plugged in b. What comes next? Plus or minus. Okay. Next, what do I write? The square root. Okay. Now I'll make a little space here. Under the square root, what number comes next? Negative 11 for b. And what comes after negative 11? Almost. We just wrote negative 11. The squared, the 2. We can't forget that. I know, we're doing this one step by step. So now I have negative 11 squared. Now we can do the minus 4. And we have 2 more things to plug in after the 4.
Oh, so you have to put negative 4 because of the formula?
Yes, yes. The formula, you cannot change anything except for the letters. Just like here, when we wrote negative 11, because b is negative 11, the formula has a negative sign in front of b. That's why we still have to put the negative sign out in front of negative 11. So that's a great question too. We still do minus 4 because that's what the formula tells us to do, okay? The formula cannot be changed. We only write it exactly as it says. So minus 4 is what the formula says, times 2, that's our A, okay, and here I'm going to put little labels over these. Okay, so we have negative 4 times A times what? Negative 3, C. Okay. So we have everything on top plugged in. What goes on the bottom? 2 times 2. A. Okay. We have plugged it all in. Perfect. So I'm going to give everybody a moment to catch up with that, especially when we're using colors. I know sometimes it just takes a while to switch colors. So I'm going to try to be more mindful of giving you guys enough time to write. And call me out. If I go too fast, I won't get my feelings hurt. Just tell me, slow down. Okay? All right. Everything is plugged in. Where do we go from here? Now we want to start simplifying everything. So let's do that. And I know I said to start with under the square root, but the more problems I work with you guys, the more I realize I think it will make more sense and feel more natural to just go from left to right. Because since this is totally separate, the negative 11, from what's under the square root, it's not going to affect our answer, and then we don't have to memorize what order to do things in. So let's just go left to right. I'm going to rewrite my x, my equals, and now let's start here. Negative 11. What does that become? Positive 11. And I'm going to cross everything off as I go, so I know I'm done with it. So now I have positive 11. What's next? Plus or minus. Good. Plus or minus. Then I'll bring down my square root. Yes, so now we're going to do negative 11 squared, which, Cheyenne, you are correct, 121. Positive or negative? Positive. Will this number ever be negative? No, never. You cannot square a number and get a negative answer. If you do, it is wrong because it is always positive. If you multiply a negative times a negative, you get a positive answer. So that first number is always positive. We have 121. Okay. Now, what comes next?
Negative 4 times 2.
Negative 4 times 2, what is that?
Negative 8.
Negative 8 times
Negative
negative 3.
3. That makes it positive 24.
Yes, positive 24. So I just wrote that up here, and now I'm going to bring the 24 down. Is it plus 24 or minus? Plus 24. Good. Okay, so I'm done with that. Now,
2 times 2.
yes, now we just have the numbers underneath. 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so we've rewritten just about everything. We have rewritten everything. We're not quite done simplifying yet, but we've got a good starting point. I'm going to give everybody a moment to get caught up to there.
145.
Yes, it will be 145 when you add those together. Not yet. I don't yet. Okay, let's see. Up to this point, do we have any questions about how I got any of these numbers? Okay, wonderful. So, just like Ricky said, now we have one more thing to simplify under the square root. 121 plus 24 is 145. Now this is still the square root of 145. It won't just be 145. So now, what do I do next?
Square root of 145?
Yeah, what's the square root of 145?
12.04.
Okay, 145, 12.04. Oh, oops. Let's see. Yep, 12.04. Okay, so we have now simplified it all. And we'll rewrite it as x equals 11 plus or minus 12.04 divided by 4. And we're almost done. Let's see. Okay. Does anybody need a minute still? Are you still copying down over there, Lisa?
Yeah.
Okay. You ready? All right. What do I do next?
Break it down.
Break it down. I've got 2 problems now. What's the first one?
11 plus 12.04.
Yes, 11 plus 12.04. All of it is divided by 4 still. And minus.
11 minus 12.04.
Good. 11 minus 12.04. Divided by 4. Okay. So, let's solve the first one. What do I do first?
Subtract.
Yeah, we need to do what's on top first. 11 plus 12.04. And that is 23.04 divided by 4.
5.76.
Yep, 5.76. That's our first answer. Okay. Now I want to make sure that everybody's getting the same thing and we're all typing our answers in the right way. So if you are to this point in your notes, make sure that whenever you type in this final problem, 11 plus 12.04 and then divide by 4, make sure you're getting that 5.76. Everybody check that.
I got 5.77.
Okay, that's fine. That's close enough. 5.77, close enough.
I got 7.8.
You got 5.78? Close enough. As long as it's in the ballpark, I'll take it. Okay. You get it too? Sweet. Okay, last one. 11 minus 12.04. What does that give us?
Negative 1.04.
Perfect. Negative 1.04. Still divide by 4.
Negative 0.26.
Perfect. Negative 0.26. Bless you. Now everybody make sure you're able to get these numbers or very close to these numbers before we move on. Is anybody unable to get these numbers? Or we all got them? You get that one? Yay! Okay. All right, guys, it's break time. It is 10:23. I'm hoping that doing these problems more slowly was helpful. We will come back at, let's say, 10:45. So, 20-minute break. Take your break. And let me pause this recording. We are back from our break, and I just passed out a bunch of these worksheets. If anybody snuck in and I didn't see you, there are copies of this up at the front of the room. And these are all quadratic equations, just like we've been working through. The only difference is you'll see different letters than X. So that will change things just a tiny bit. Basically, you're solving for that letter instead of solving for X. I don't mind if you still write X instead because I prefer X. For some reason, the other letters kind of throw me off. But we've just done a few practice problems together at the first half of class. So now I'm going to give you guys some time, and I'm going to set a pretty long timer for y'all to work on these on your own. I want you to do as many as you can, and if you get stuck, ask a friend or ask me for help. I'm here to support you guys. So there's 10 problems on here. There is an answer key on the back. Now the answers are all written as fractions. So if you get a decimal answer, just make sure that you double check. For example, on number 1, if these are my numbers, I can type that in my calculator. -5 divided by 3. Whatever decimal I get, that's what your answer should have been. So I'm going to leave this up. I will pause this recording again, and then I'm going to set a timer. Please don't be afraid to ask questions. I'm here to help. All right, guys. We've had about 25 minutes to work on these, so I'm sure we've gotten quite a few done. It's okay if you didn't finish all of them, though. Let's just look at some of these together. So let's start with number 1. Okay, what do I need to do first? Yep, let's find A, B, and C. My A is 18. My B is 21. And my C, -15. Okay, now I am going to do my work on a separate page because there's not a lot of room on this worksheet. So I'm going to go back to my notes I was writing on and see if we can fit it all on here. So this is number 1. Okay. So, and I'm just going to copy down the values of A, B, and C. Our A was 18, our B was 21, and our C was -15. So, let's start plugging stuff in. I have X equals, what comes next? -21 plus or minus the square root of what comes next? 21 squared, which will become that number, yes. 21 squared minus 4 times what? 18 times what? Negative 15. Good. And all of that gets divided by 2 times what? 18. Good. Okay, so we have our A, B, and C all plugged in. Now we need to start simplifying, and we'll just do it all kind of left to right, rewriting everything as we go. So, I have x equals, my negative 21 doesn't need to change, plus or minus, and now I'm going to rewrite my square root. And what is 21 squared? 441. So remember, squared means that number is being multiplied by itself. 21 times 21 gives us 441. Okay, now what do I do with these three numbers? We're multiplying them. So negative 4 times 18 times 15, or negative 15, what does that give us? Yep. Yes, 1080, 1080. Now we got a positive answer because there were two negatives that canceled each other out. So we're not going to write minus 1080, we're going to write plus 1080. Okay. And all of that is divided by, what's 2 times 18? 36. Good. Perfect. Okay, what is there left to simplify? Yeah, 441 plus 1080. We need to get that number under the square root together. What is that when I add those together? 1521. And that is still under a square root. So, there's one last step. What do I need to do before I rewrite my problem? Yes, now we want to see what is the square root of 1521, 1521. So, let's do that. Second square root 1521, and we get 39. Nice and simple. Okay, so my square root is done, and I know I'm going to be writing 39. So I'll just rewrite everything again. I have x equals negative 21 plus or minus 39. And all of that is divided by 36. Okay, do we have, bless you, any questions up to this point? Okay, let's see. So we have our numbers. Where do I go from here? Yeah, we're going to start by adding my top numbers. So, negative 21 plus 39. And all of that gets divided by 36. And I'm going to put the top numbers in parentheses just to remind us to do that first. And what else do we need to do? Subtracting. Now, I will always recommend writing out both the addition and subtraction problems before starting to solve either one, because I find that once you write down the plus side of things and then you solve it, you found an answer and you think you're done. It's good to have both written out just so that you can see there's still more work to be done. So we're going to write the minus as well. Negative 21 minus 39. All of that is divided by 36. Okay. So what is negative 21 plus 39? Negative 19? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Negative 19. Let's see, and I'm just going to double check answers as I go. Negative 21 plus 39. Oh, it was very close. 18, actually. 18. What did you type in your calculator? Oh, okay, so let's talk about this again. You typed negative 21 plus 39 divided by 36 all at once. We can't do that because your calculator is going to do 39 divided by 36 first and then subtract 21 because of the order of operations. So we actually have to do the top part first separately or else we'll get the wrong answer. So we'll start with that negative 21 plus 39 and that gives us positive 18. And then we divide by 36. And what does that give us? 0.5, which is the same as 1/2. Yes?
When you simplifying that the first addition to get the 18 over 36,
Mm-hmm.
like, do I have to write that one? Because sometimes when I just go...
If you don't write it, I'm not going to take points off. But if you get a wrong answer and maybe you typed it in all at once and forgot and don't have this written out, I won't be able to see what you did wrong. So it's never a bad idea to write every little step, but if you know that you're typing it incorrectly and you feel confident about your answer, you're not going to get points taken off for not having that written. I think it's always a good idea to write it just to make sure we're, crossing our T's and dotting our I's, but that's not what I'm grading, so optional. Okay, so we got one of our answers. Next, negative 21 minus 39, what's that? Negative 60? Okay, negative 60 divided by 36. Negative 1 point, your calculator will say 666666667. It's rounding a decimal up that is actually a repeating decimal, so it's 1.6 repeating. However, if you wrote 1.67 or even 1.7, I won't count it wrong, but this is the most accurate answer, 1.6 repeating. What'd you say?
1.66.
That would be right, yes. That's fine with me. And that's our answers. Okay. You guys get number 1 okay? Okay, is there any point where you feel like maybe you're getting stuck or feeling the most confused? I have a feeling it's doing all of the square root stuff.
Yeah, I got stuck
At 21.
like calculating the square root and then
Yes, okay. So I think I might have something that will help. And I feel like the more I've taught this class, I almost want to teach this next lesson before this one. So I'm going to show you a thing that maybe will make life a little easier when we're using the quadratic formula because we have to learn it next anyway. So before we do more of these problems, let's take a quick pause and open our notebook. And I have something that might help us in the future. So I'm going to start a new page of notes. And this is page 2 for me. And it's day 10. And I'm going to teach you a new word. And I promise it's easier than the quadratic formula by about 10 times. And I think it will make doing the quadratic formula easier for all of you. Continued. Okay. So, this is something called Discriminant. Discriminant. Fancy word. The discriminant is something that we can calculate from a quadratic equation, and it tells us a few things about the problem. But right now I'm just going to give you the formula for that. So the discriminant formula, capital D, equals b squared minus 4ac. This is the part of the quadratic formula that's under the square root. Okay? I think what would be helpful for us is if we get some practice just solving this part of the problem. Because once we're fluent at doing this, the quadratic formula is cake. Because you can find the discriminant and then just plug it in and go from there. So let's write this in our notes if you don't yet, because it's something that we will be talking about very soon. We're just going to do it a little today as well. And let's look at problem number 2 for this. I'm going to write that problem, but I'm going to use X instead of Q. So problem 2 on that worksheet is 10x squared plus 42x plus 44 equals 0. So let's not solve this problem yet. Let's find the discriminant of this problem. So we're going to take the same first steps. We want to identify the values of A, B, and C. What's my A? 10. What's my B? 42. What's my C? 44. Okay. Okay. So let's use this formula first. We're going to write D equals. Now we have B squared minus 4 times A times C. So what goes in my first blank? B, which is 42. Okay. Minus 4 times A, which is 10, times C, which is 44. Okay. So let's now solve just this part. We're not going to worry about the rest of the quadratic formula, just this part. So according to my order of operations, what do I do first?
Do you think that everyone in here knows the order of operations?
We should. We're in Algebra 2. We learned that a long, long time ago. But if you ever forget them, they are up here on the board, a little poster. The order of operations is parentheses first. I appreciate it. It's a good question. So P for parentheses or anything in grouping symbols. Okay? Next is E for exponents. M and D are multiplication and division. A and S are addition and subtraction. So the order of operations tells us that we go in that order when we are solving a problem. First, we solve anything that is grouped in parentheses. Now, this kind of parentheses is a little bit different than, like this is more so separating numbers. Whenever we say parentheses in the order of operations, we're more so referring to, let's see. Like if I had 3 plus 5 times 4, okay, according to the order of operations, which thing would we do first? 5 times 4. But if I had parentheses here, now what would I do first? 3 plus 5. We would do that first, okay? So that's where parentheses is different. Now, if I have 3 plus 5 times 4, what do I do first?
Okay.
You're still going to do multiplication first. You only do what's in parentheses first if there is an operation happening in the parentheses. Operation meaning a thing you do to numbers, like adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. So 3 plus 5 would come first here because that whole operation is in parentheses. Right here, the number 3 is in parentheses, but it's not telling me to do anything with that 3 inside the parentheses. This is just separating the number 3. Sometimes you'll see that. Let's see, how about 42 squared minus 4 times 10 times 44. This is the same thing as what I wrote up here, just without the parentheses. These parentheses don't have operations inside of them. Okay, so if there's no parentheses telling me I need to do a certain step first, what comes next? Exponents. Exponents are like these little numbers here, the 2, right? So we're going to do the 42 squared first, our first exponent. Which 42 squared, let's just write this out because I've noticed quite a few of us, and honestly I have to say, Cheyenne, I appreciate you reminding me because I don't want to get stuck in my head thinking we're in Algebra 2, we should know the order of operations. Is that true? Yes, we should at this level know the order of operations. However, I also need to realize that some of you are coming into Algebra 2 after not being in school for maybe 10 years. Maybe you don't remember everything, okay? So sometimes those reminders bring me down to earth and help me remember that like this is different from a regular Algebra 2 class. We are all coming in at different levels. So, you know, I will always humble myself if I need, call me out if I'm moving too fast or if I'm assuming you know something that you don't. I really want to make sure that we understand, and I want you to be comfortable to ask those questions and say those things. So let me do this real quick, and then I'm going to ask you another question. First of all, 42 squared, what is really happening here? 42 times 42. That's what squared means. You're taking that number times itself, okay? So just in case we didn't know that, that's what's happening here. Now, before we do move on and solve the rest of this, would anybody benefit from a more in-depth conversation about the order of operations? Is anybody still confused about that maybe? We probably aren't going to admit it. Okay. How do I ask that and get an actual answer? Let's see.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. Why not? Let's do it. Let's talk about the order of operations. Okay. Pause from this. If you know this and you get it and this is boring for you, I'm sorry, but it is a lot better to be bored than to be sitting here confused. I would rather have everybody bored and a few people so thankful that we're doing this than a couple people like excited that we're moving fast and then everybody's confused. I want us to all succeed, okay? And it's never a bad idea to practice the basics, okay? So this will be a quick little mini lesson. We're going to spend about 5 minutes on it. Order of operations. If you know this, you can take a bathroom break, whatever you want, okay? Or you can ignore me. So here's our mini lesson on order of operations. All right. So the magic phrase that you may have heard in elementary school is PEMDAS. P-E-M-D-A-S. PEMDAS. Okay? We always learned it as, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, because that helps us remember the letters, it helped us remember the order. So, in the order of operations, starting with the P, that P stands for parentheses. Only if there are operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, only if they're inside of the parentheses. For example, 3 plus 7, something like that. This could also be talking about grouping symbols. For example, in the quadratic formula, we refer to this, the square root, is kind of like a grouping symbol, saying that we need to solve everything underneath the square root first, and then we can move forward. So, parentheses, I'm going to write grouping symbols as well. Okay. Any questions about parentheses? Okay. So next we'll look at exponents. Exponents are the little numbers, the squareds that you'll see. And when you see that exponent, it's telling you how many times am I multiplying this number x by itself. For example, let's see, 2 to the second power, 2 squared means 2 times 2. 2 to the third power, what's the difference? What would I do for this one? Yes, 2 times 2 times 2. Notice we did it 2 times for squared, 3 times for, this is actually called cubed, but we'll say to the third power. And we do exponents next. That is the next thing after there's no more operations in parentheses. Okay. Now, the M and the D are grouped together. So I'm going to write M and D. Because we're not doing multiplication first and then division, we're actually doing multiplication and division from left to right. So, multiplication and division from left to right. Meaning if I had 5 divided by 3 times 2, which operation would I do first? the division. Even though the M comes first in PEMDAS, it's grouped with the D. We're going from left to right. We would do 5 divided by 3 and then times 2. Left to right. So we would do 5 divided by 3, which is 1.6 repeating. And then we do times 2, which would give us, off the top of my head, what is that? 3.18, you said? Okay. I'm going to figure it out. 3.2. Perfect. So that would be our answer there. Okay. So we're going from left to right. All right. And last but not least, A and S, what do those stand for? Addition and subtraction. Same thing as the multiplication and division. These are grouped. We go from left to right. So addition and subtraction from left to right. Meaning, even if I had 15 minus 12 plus 4, just because A comes first, it doesn't mean I do 12 plus 4 first. We go from left to right. These are grouped together. So what would I do first? Yes, I would subtract 12 first. So 15 minus 12 gives me, I believe it's 3. And then we add 4. And we get 7. So there's a little refresher on the order of operations. And if this is something that any of you find particularly difficult, that is okay. I know we are all coming in at different levels. I actually have a bunch of practice worksheets working just with practicing the order of operations. If any of you want those, you're welcome to come and ask me after class. I've got them in my file drawer. I got lots of them because that's like the whole first 3 weeks of pre-algebra is getting this down. So, is that helpful?
Yes.
I hope so. And again, I appreciate you saying something, Cheyenne, because I forget that sometimes we don't know all of these things that I assume y'all know. So, always appreciate that. Okay. Any questions? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move this unless does anyone still need it? Okay. So, back to our notes. Here's the problem we were working on. A is 10, B is 42, C is 44. We have our numbers plugged in. So, according to the order of operations, we do exponents first, because there's no operations in parentheses here. So, 42 times 42, what is that? Woo, say it again. 1,764, so 1764, okay? What do I do next?
Multiplication.
We're going to do our multiplication. So, even though technically this is minus 4 times 10 times 44, we can think of this as a negative 4 like we've been doing. So negative 4 times 10 times 44. What is that? Negative 1760. That what everybody got? Perfect. So I'm going to cross that off, and the number we got is negative 1760. And what is the last step? Subtract them. What do we get when we subtract 1764 minus 1760?
4.
Just 4. So, D or the discriminant, that fancy new word I just gave you, is equal to 4 for number 2. So here's how I think this will help us with the quadratic formula. Instead of finding everything all at once, where we're doing x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, we could think of the quadratic formula as x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of the discriminant, which is 4, all over 2a. And doesn't that look a little easier to mess with than the whole quadratic formula? Yeah? So how about that? Maybe we change the way that we've been approaching this, and we find the discriminant first, and then use this much easier quadratic formula. Now, if you like the regular old way, absolutely, we can continue doing that too. But what I have found last term that I taught this, and so far your reactions this term, is that this tends to make it feel a little bit less intense, just because there's not so many moving parts. But we'll do more work with this as we go on. So let's finish solving this problem now, real quick, and then I'll let you leave. Okay? Let's finish. So now I have my discriminant, it's 4. So if we want to finish the problem, I have x equals negative b. B is 42. So we have negative 42 plus or minus the square root of what? Of 4, which is 2, yes. All over 2 times a, which is 10. Okay. Okay. So, if I wanted to rewrite it, first of all, what's the square root of 4? 2. 2 times 10 is 20. So now I have x equals negative 42 plus or minus 2 divided by 20. And then we can separate into our equations, or 2 separate ones, the plus and the minus. And again, some of this you may end up doing in your head, but if not, let's just write everything. We got negative 42 plus 2 over 20. Negative 42 minus 2 over 20. And we're running through this last one kind of quick because I know we're about out of time. What's negative 42 plus 2? Negative 40. What's that divided by 20? Negative 2. Negative 42 minus 2?
Negative 42. 44.
Hey, you got there eventually. Negative 44. Divide that by 20 and we get negative 2.2, you said?
Yeah.
2.2. All right, there we go. That's our answers for that one. We'll do more with this tomorrow. For now, I will say that we have 5 minutes. In those 5 minutes, I don't expect you to be able to finish a whole exit ticket. So I would like for you to just turn this worksheet in. I'm gonna grade it for participation. If you did it, you will get 100%. Okay, participation today. Or you can just show it to me and I'll check your name off. No. You don't have to have them all done. Nope. That's fine. That is perfectly fine. You can even just flash it at me when I say your name. I'll tell you that I gave you a check mark and you'll be good to go. So, I'm going to end that recording. The exit ticket is participation today.